Hello, shalom, and welcome to the final episode of the 2021 Congressional Conversations series, a show where we discuss the priorities of New York's Jewish community with members of the New York Congressional Delegation. I'm your host, Michael Miller, the Executive Vice President and CEO of the Jewish Community Relations Council of New York, JCRC-NY, and today we are truly honored to be joined by a long time friend, the Majority Leader of the United States Senate, representing the great state of New York from the great borough of Brooklyn, Senator Chuck Schumer. Welcome, Mr. Majority Leader.
Well, thank you, Michael. It's great to be on. You and the JCRC and Chuck Schumer have been friends. I can't remember if it's 3 decades or 4 decades, but something like that. I remember when you were a young understudy to Malcolm Hoenlein at the JCRC. But we've had a great relationship, and I so much respect the job you and the JCRC have done. Before, though, we get into your questions, I do want to start with a moment of thought for the 45 victims of the terrible tragedy at Mount Meron, some of whom were New Yorkers. I just sat Shiva this morning, in fact, with the Noblowitz family. I saw the picture of their beautiful son, Menachem, and his fiance. They showed me a whole album. And it just breaks your heart. So our prayers are with these families who lost loved ones, so many young in the prime of life.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And we really should be pausing and think about those innocent, precious lives that were lost. So back to you, Senator, let's start from the beginning. In the beginning, you might want to refer to yourself as Chuck and you, as we were just talking about.
That's, folks, what my grandmother used to call me. And when I came to JCRC, I would tell the story of Chuck and you.
Right, indeed. That's when I was my understudy capacity. You've lived in Brooklyn for almost the entire life. You've been representing New Yorkers for a long time. And since you were first elected to the New York State Assembly in '75, and subsequently to Congress in 1981, and now you're the Senate Majority Leader. Let's share with the viewers a bit more about your background and how you got into politics in the first place.
Sure. Okay, good. That's that's a good way to start. First, I am the highest-ranking Jewish elected official ever in America. Elected, maybe Ruth Bader Ginsburg or Brandeis or someone was higher, but they were not elected. Supreme Court. And my father was an exterminator, never made much money. And here I am, the Majority Leader. It's a tribute to America and frankly, how good America is to the Jewish people. But to answer your question, here is my little story. So I went to James Madison High School. It's a large public school in Southern Brooklyn. From there, I was lucky enough to get into Harvard. Very few people that at that time, like me, got into Harvard. It was mostly preppies, wealthy families from across the country whose kids went to private schools, many fewer Jewish people.
You didn't get in on a basketball scholarship, right?
Well, that's part of the story. I got in for 2 reasons. One, I was a decent, not great basketball player, although I tell people our motto at Madison was, we may be small, but we're slow. But second, I had to get a job when I was 14. And to help my family, a Madison High School teacher, math teacher, advertised on the bulletin board, starting a new business, need to hire a clerical worker, needs how to run a Mimeo machine. Now, your older folks will remember, but for the young people, it was a clunky machine. You type out a stencil, put it on a machine with rollers, and as it went around and around, a copy would come out each time it went around. Okay, I got the job. What was the new business he was starting? He had this brilliant idea. He was going to prepare students for the SATs. What was his name? Kaplan. He later sold the business to the Washington Post for a couple of $100 million or 57, I don't know, some large amount of money. Anyway, at nights, weekends, and holidays, I'd run the machine as it would go around and around. I'd read the preparatory materials over and over again, and I got 800s on my tests. So the guidance counselor calls my mother up and says he got 4 800s out of 5 tests. Wow. And he's an athlete, which I wasn't much of, but he ought to apply to Harvard. I apply, I get in, I'm scared. How am I going to make it? I go to the one guy from my high school who'd gone to Harvard before me, and I said, how am I going to make it at this place with all these fancy people? Try out, he was a basketball player, much better than me. He said, try out for the freshman basketball team. They're terrible. So you'll make the team. Those will be your friends. That's who you'll hang out with. Third day of school, tryouts. We're wearing these little numbers. Coach calls me up. Number 27. Yes, sir. You're Schumer. Yes, sir. Oh, you went to Madison. Yes, sir. How's Coach so-and-so? He's fine, sir. Then he looks at me quizzically. He said, you played forward? I said, yes, sir. He said, how tall are you? I said, I'm 6'1", sir. He said, can you dribble? I said, that's not my strong suit, sir. He said, go home. He didn't watch me touch the ball. I was distraught, wrote my mom a note saying, I told you I should have gone to Brooklyn College. I'm coming home Monday. Beshert. Everyone knows what Beshert is. That night, someone knocks on my door and says, how would you like to join the Harvard Young Democrats? We're working for a man named Eugene McCarthy, who's running against Lyndon Johnson on the basis we shouldn't be in the Vietnam War. I'd already lost a friend to the Vietnam War. And so I hated the war. I was totally non-political, but I said, okay, what was I going to do? You know, I had to cut from the team. That next day, I get on a bus with a whole bunch of kids from the Boston area. We go up to New Hampshire. I loved it. It was like sports, teamwork. We divided up neighborhoods and knocked on doors. We designed our own leaflets. The McCarthy campaign was so ramshackle that by my third month, I was made the deputy campaign manager of one of the little McCarthy offices because they had 2 Mimeo machines and I moved over. But if you remember your history, McCarthy didn't win. He came so close that Lyndon Johnson, the most powerful man in the world, said, I'm not going to run again. And I said, holy moly, a ragtag group of students and other nobodies topples the most powerful man on the world because they believe in an issue that they care about. This is what I want to dedicate my life to. So I changed my major from, there's a quick more part of the story. I'll be quick. I changed my major from chemistry to government. And I figured I'd be a lawyer and do politics as an avocation. I worked for a big fancy law firm between my second and third year of law school, Paul Weiss, Rifkin, Portman, Garrison. I hated it, Michael. I was, no offense to the lawyers here, but I found legal research boring. I was pushing a pencil for somebody I didn't know, somebody I didn't care about. And my father had this junky little exterminating business. He hated his job and he would pace the floor Sunday night, 2 a.m. because he hated going to work. I said, I'm not going to repeat Dad's mistake, and I'm going to run for office. But the assembly seat was open in the district. The machine had always controlled it. I ran against the machine. And I won. And so I've been in politics ever since. I was, one of the youngest ever elected to the assembly, and here I am.
Weren't you the youngest at the time?
Yes. No, well, there's a dispute because of primary or general, whether it was Dick Gottfried or me. But it's been written that I'm the youngest elected since Theodore Roosevelt. So
yeah, always the battle between Manhattan and Brooklyn.
Right.
So let's talk about some of the issues, and of course, we're so proud that you, as the first elected member of the Jewish faith, has risen to the heights of political power in this country. So the influence that you have is massive. And of course, we're all being confronted by a massive pandemic. What is it, Senator, that you can share with our viewers regarding to COVID-19, our recovery, and particularly the American Rescue Plan and vaccination? How is all this going to help us get this country back on the right and firm footing?
Right. Well, Michael, I made a promise that if God willing, I became majority leader, people would see a difference. And I think they have with the American Rescue Plan. First, we promised checks to people, anyone, individual below 75,000, a couple below 150,000, got the checks, the $1,400 checks in the mail. Most of you should have gotten it already who's listening. Second, and maybe even more important, we said we're going to make vaccines available. We're going to mass produce them. And where the Trump administration had terribly screwed up was in distribution. There was no coordination with the states and localities. We said we're going to change all that, which the ARP did. And as a result, as of now, we're getting to the 50% mark. Hopefully we can get to the 70% mark of people vaccinated. This weekend, I saw many more people out on the streets. I was out on Long Island. You'd never think you'd like traffic jams, but there was a huge traffic jam. And I said, good, that means people are out and getting about. So that's changing. But we did a lot of other things. I love New York. I got over $250 billion in New York in the 3 bills. And the institutions we saved that might have gone under some of our biggest hospitals would have gone bankrupt, except for the work that we were able to do. Broadway and our arts venues, our restaurants, our small businesses. And of note in the Jewish community, I even made sure that religious institutions would get money. They were suffering, and they do so much social services, whether they be whatever religion they are. And I made sure they could get the PPP. I've helped out, for those of you, I've helped out, our public schools have gotten a tremendous amount of money. They can do summer schools. And we made sure some of our yeshivas got the money as well, because it was unfair, not without taking away from the public schools. In fact, the teachers supported it. So we've looked up and down the line at where New York needed help, and we've been able to do it. And we even expanded the child tax credit, which should take a third of our children, a half of our children out of poverty, save the subways. The subways would have stopped running if we didn't have the money. No one was riding them, no fares. So I'm very proud of what we did. And I'll say one final thing about New York. We're going to come back. I have been through a lot of crises. When I got to the assembly, it was in 1975. It was the fiscal crisis of New York City. And then I served, of course, after 9/11. And after the financial crisis, and after Sandy. In each case, everyone said, New York's over, forget it, won't be diminished, will never be. And each time we bounce back better, we will again. And one of the things I'm proud of, in each instance, I got George Bush to pledge 20 billion for New York. In the Sandy bill, we got 60 billion to rebuild New York. In the financial crisis, we made sure that, we kept going. New York's gonna come back. There's needs for big cities where many people of all different kinds and thinking and everything bump into each other. Every city won't be a large city, but there's a need for a bunch. There's a need for New York. Some people will leave, but they'll be replaced by others.
Well, thank you very much for your advocacy and most particularly your leadership in ensuring the safety, security, and well-being of New York and all New Yorkers. But there's one issue, there's one issue where, once again, you have been the leading voice, and that's the Nonprofit Security Grant Program.
Yes.
You have been the leading voice.
Well, I'd say I'd been the second leading voice. The leading voice was somebody named Michael Miller of the JCRC, who really pushed us very hard to get this done.
Thank you, and I'm being pushed by my team, by David Pollock and a lot of others.
David Pollock did a good job, yes.
Right. But NSGP has been so critical to our Jewish institutions and institutions along. I don't know how many majority leaders ever use the term yeshivas and shuls like you do, but the yeshivas
and forget the Stiblach. I even use that.
Those are the Brooklyn roots and the Stiblach. And you had called, I think it was 2 years ago, for 360 million when the number was down near 60 or 90 million. We were able to kick it up. You were able to kick it up last year to 180 million. I know that 100 members of the House have now called for it to be doubled once again to the 360 that you have wanted all along. So where are we right now? And if you could just share with our viewers your views on NSGP, the nonprofit security.
Well, it's very important. As we just saw what happened in the Bronx, there is an increase in anti-Semitism, and there's an increase in all kinds of hate and violence against minority groups. So then when you have it against one, it ends up being against all. That's what history is.
Right now, the AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islander.
Yes. And Michael, I've seen Michael representing the Jewish community. I've been there at many of their rallies, and that is a good thing. But in any case,
rally together on Sunday in Queens at Flushing.
Yeah, we were together. Yes, we were. So anyway, the grant gives our religious institutions some help in securing themselves, whether it's fencing or cameras or lighting or doors or whatever. And it's very well used and very much needed by our community. It was originally 90, you're right. I wanted a 360. I was only minority leader in December. I got it doubled to 180. Now we're going to try to get the full 360 a year, which is very much needed and has broad support. So I'm very optimistic.
That's great. And thank you for your leadership in that regard. Another area of leadership is with the overseas agenda, and that's Israel. You were the leader in passing the U.S. Israel Security Assistance Act, which codified the 10-year Obama-Biden MOU for security assistance to Israel, which is needed to ensure Israel's qualitative military edge, the QME, over those nations and terrorist organizations that seek to harm or destroy Israel. Israel has been a focal point of your foreign policy orientation, and not all of our viewers are Jewish, and even those who are Jewish, I think it's very important for them to hear from you as a majority leader of the United States Senate why Israel is just so important for the United States of America to support.
Well, there are a whole lot of reasons. One is just geopolitics. Israel is our strongest and best ally in a region that's fraught with peril, and that the United States is dependent on, not simply for oil, but for many other things. So it's very, very important. We have a moral commitment to Israel as the only democracy in the area, as well as a technological giant that, if there were peace, could help all these other countries advance. So there's so much that Israel's, and people forget. One of the things that plagues me, you and I have talked about it, the younger generation does not understand the history of Israel. I tell people that when I was in James Madison High School in 1967, I walked around the halls with a transistor radio. The young people first say, "What the heck is that?" Explain. But I thought Israel would be washed into the sea.
Yeah.
And now Israel seems stronger. But let us not forget, there's a huge danger to Israel from the terrorism that comes out of Iran. The rockets that Iran gives Hezbollah that are in Lebanon, there are many more of them. They're more accurate. They're longer range. So there's a need for the U.S. to stick by Israel. And one final thing I'd say, the enemies of Israel, who are many for many reasons, would like to break that United States-Israel relationship, because even though Israel is strong, if she stands alone, she's in much greater danger. And so I know there are some wide variety of views probably on this Zoom about Israel, but we all believe and are united that United States must stick by Israel. That's why the MOU, which is called a memo of understanding, was the largest amount of security assistance in Israel ever, and it has broad bipartisan support. And as long as I'm leader, it's going to be honored.
No, thank you very much. And you opened the door with regard to Iran, and U.S. is in negotiations indirectly with Iran regarding the potential for re-entering JCPOA. There's a debate in Congress whether preventing Iran from securing and gaining nuclear weaponry or dealing with their influence with terrorism and acting as a destabilizing factor in the Middle East. What are your views? You voted against the JCPOA, and we thank you for that. What are your opinions regarding American policy towards Iran?
Yes, I voted against the JCPOA. Barack Obama was not a happy camper, at least in regards to me in that regard. But I laid out clearly at the time what I thought were the deficiencies in the deal. Your listeners can, obviously, many of them remember, some of them can go read what I wrote. Now, I also opposed Donald Trump's unilateral withdrawal because the results of Trump's decision isolated the US instead of Iran. Trump so screwed this up. He got the Europeans so mad at him on every area that there would be no cooperation. And so that was difficult. And now, instead of isolating Iran and bringing Iran to its knees with a unilateral, more or less, boycott, it brought Iran closer to a nuclear weapon. Today, Iran has a greater ability. They're closer to producing a nuclear weapon than they were the day Trump pulled out of the agreement or the day Obama signed the agreement. And so that's a real danger to us, because we cannot have a nuclear Iran. That is out of the question. That's correctly put. I don't always agree with Bibi Netanyahu, but on this issue that it's an existential threat to Israel, I completely agree. Now, I understand why the current administration is in negotiations, and I don't have any problem with them sitting down and talking. But I also believe that the administration and Congress believe that Iran's terrorism, their ballistic missiles, their human rights abuses, the hostage taking, what they do to Israel and Iran is very, very bad. So I believe we have to follow through on all of these issues. And it's not that we shouldn't sit down, because if we don't sit down, Iran could just go forward and produce a nuclear weapon, which is the existential threat. But when we do sit down, we have to make sure there are a lot of issues on the table.
Yeah, thank you. And I know that time is very precious to you and your responsibilities as majority leader. I was just one final question for you regarding political cynicism. We all know that New York is going to be losing one congressional seat because only 89 people didn't complete the census form. So what do you say to people, Senator, who feel that filling out such forms really doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter to vote? How do we get people motivated to really exercise their democratic franchise?
Yeah, Michael, this is one of my missions. You know, we must show, now that this is a little more political than usual, but now that we have a Democratic Senate, no, it's very slim majority, I will admit, a Democratic House also with a rather thin majority, and a Democratic president, I have to think, we have to show people that we can get things done that the previous administration couldn't. We've off to a good start with the ARP, the checks, the vaccines, the money to get the schools open, the restaurants and stores open, is just a start. But we have to show people that it can make a difference, that elections make a difference. There's a lot of cynicism, but that cynicism should be erased. Even the whole structure of the ARP, the Trump bill, the top 1%, got something like 80, their tax cut bill, 80% of the benefits went to the very, very high end of society. In our bill, the top 1% got zero. We aimed it at not just the poorest people, as much as we want to help them, they need it the most, but at middle class people as well. And people are beginning to see, if you look at even the statistics, that, hey, maybe they did make a difference. We got to keep at it. And that's why I will be pursuing it very, very diligently to get things done. This is the hardest job I've ever had, but I have more enthusiasm and more energy for this job than any job I've ever had, because it's so darn important to show America we can have a positive path again and erase some of the sourness and the anger and the cynicism that you talk about. America in the past has always been a sunny, optimistic, can-do country. We have to restore that, and that's my mission for New York and for the country. I'm going to say one final thing before you sign off.
Yeah.
You are retiring this summer. I didn't want you to retire because you're still young, forever young, and you do a great job. But ever since 1986, you have been not only an advisor and friend to me and so many others, but you have done an amazing job for the Jewish community of New York, and frankly, we're the largest community, of course, in the country, for the Jewish community, for America. So not to you, but to all your listeners, on June 23rd, we're going to honor Michael. I will be part of it in a gala. So if you need information, sorry to use your time as a little commercial for you, the JCRC-NY Gala.org. Please tune in, write in, and help make it a success. But you've been great, Michael. You've been a blessing to our people and our city and our country.
Thank you so much. I truly cherish my relationship with you, even though you yell at me once in a while.
That is true.
You get me
motivated. Brooklyn, I say what I think still.
And that actually goes back to what I started as the underling. But that's the relationship that we have. We're very honest with each other. And I as I said, I cherish this relationship. And I thank God I've been in this business long enough to see you rise through the ranks, from the Assembly to Congress, to the Senate, and now as the United States Senate Majority Leader. And this guy, Chuck Schumer, was on Congressional Conversations with little old me, and all of our thousands of viewers. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the last of a series. The senator wanted to be the last. We've done 20 interviews, 18 members of the House, the entire downstate congressional delegation, Senator Gillibrand, and now the U.S. Senate Majority Leader, Senator Chuck Schumer. I'm just thrilled to have done this series, and all the more exhilarated to have concluded it with Chuck Schumer. So, dear friends, If you want more information on JCRC, it's jcrcny.org. The senator gave the plug for our gala on June the 23rd. Please do join us and support us. We look forward to seeing you again on our Community Relations Corner, our other webcast series. Senator, thank you so much for spending so much time with us. A happy Shavuot coming up to the Jewish community. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much, and shalom.
And one final word to you, Michael. Hatzlacha.